Hello, I'm Pamela Davis. Welcome to episode 42 of the Well Done Life podcast. Hello, I'm Pamela Davis, and welcome to the Well Done Life podcast. This is episode 42. And as you guys know, 42, every seventh episode is very special for me. I normally like to recap and really set the intention because I do believe in the number 7 being very intentional. It is the number of completion. And so I think it's kind of funny that we would actually instead kind of flip the script instead of doing a recap. I have assembled a group of queens to kind of help us process and talk through the election. There's really probably not much else to talk about but the election, but I kind of want to use this opportunity to spotlight some of their insights and try to help propel us to move forward. So I would like to introduce my guest to you. My first guest is Diane Diaz. Diane, would you say hello and introduce yourself to everyone?
Hello, everybody. I am Diane Diaz, and I am a speaking coach and personal brand strategist with Speaking Your Brand, and we help women, entrepreneurs, and professionals create their signature talks so they can use their voices in important ways. And I'm also a teacher at a university and super excited to be here and have this chat with you all tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Diane, for participating.
My pleasure.
My next guest is Lesley Batson. Lesley, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hi. Lesley Batson. I run Rebel Rock Wealth. It's a company to help people think strategically and independently about their money. I'm very happy to be here and join the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lesley. We're so excited about having you here. And then my next guest that I'd like to introduce is Tiffany Scott. Tiffany, will you introduce yourself to the Well Done Life audience?
Sure, I'd love to. Hi, I am Tiffany. I am the founder of an organization called Sister Supper Club, where we gather in women's homes. Well, actually not in women's homes, virtually at the moment. So we gather together in unity of sisterhood to connect and have open and honest and transparent conversation. I'm also the co-host of Conversations with Tita and Tiffany, a podcast, a YouTube channel, whatever you want to call it, a Facebook Live, whatever you want to call it, where we come together and have raw and real conversations between a Black girl and a white girl to really help women and men, the men that want to support us, to end racism. Can you imagine? Can you just imagine?
Yes, that would be awesome. Thank you, Tiffany. We're so excited about having you here. And since you've introduced kind of your partner, Miss Tita Walker, would you like to introduce yourself to the Well Done Life podcast?
Yes. Hi, I'm Tita Walker, and I reside in Orlando, Florida, but I'm a native of Seattle, Washington. And I'm really involved about inspiring greatness, being better than normal. And so I try to have that movement via my Twitter. And then, as Tiffany says, I'm the Black girl of Black girl and white girl. And we just have this movement to really hone in on dismantling racism, talking about the different challenges and oppressions that, have kept people of color down. But by day, my profession, I'm a brand strategist. I like to call myself the brandologist, and I have a branding boutique agency called Tita Walker and Associates, and that is who I am.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tita. And last but definitely not least, I am very excited to introduce Queen LaLa. Queen LaLa, can you tell us a little bit about yourself too?
Hi, everybody. It's your girl, Queen LaLa, host of the Palenque Podcast. The Palenque is where voices of change gather to take actionable steps to move conversations, initiatives, projects forward that inspire change. We are based on social justice. It's a little bit of Black history. Mix that together with hip hop and some Miami 808s, and you are in the Palenque. So we would love to have you as a Palenquero, and I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't know how I can follow that. That is hilarious. I love you. And thank you, ladies, again, for all that you are doing in the communities and for advancing this conversation. So let's get started. My first question, whoever wants to kick it off, please feel free. How are you feeling? How are you feeling post the election? I know that's a loaded question, but we got to kind of start and kind of process.
Well, is it post the election yet? I feel like
I know. Are you sure?
Not quite.
It's post the day of casting your vote, but it's still going on.
True.
I'm disappointed. I really thought that we maybe had made it to a different place where we wouldn't be so closely intertwined in a tight race.
Amen to that.
I didn't think that it would be this hard to identify a clear winner yet. So that's a little disappointing and troubling that we're still so divided.
Yeah. I saw Diane and Tita. Did you guys have any thoughts as well? How you're feeling?
Oh,
Yeah.
I was just going to say mine's pretty simple. And so, I mean, I didn't watch anything. I didn't pay attention to anything. I have other things I'm spending my energy on with my health stuff. But I will say this, like how Queen LaLa, I'm not surprised, to be honest with you. I'm not really surprised because the truth of America is what we're seeing. And the truth is just prevailing. It's just been masked since, I would say, I feel like since the 50s, right? Mm-hmm. And since Trump has been in leadership, he's been able to ignite those folks who kind of was hiding behind their invisible sheets, for a lack of a better word. So it's not surprising to me that we're this tight because they don't want to let go. They don't want to let go of the reins. They don't want to let go of him. And he has a way of speaking to them to where they're going to, even the folks that are confused about who they are, they're going towards him because he knows how to brainwash them into ensuring that they're in his camp. So I'm not surprised at all. Not at all.
Okay. Diane, what about you?
I would agree with Tita on that. I'm not surprised. I am disgusted, but I'm not at all surprised. But, I do think that there is a lesson here for the Democratic Party because once again, the Republican Party has been able to unify around something, albeit something completely and utterly disgusting, which is racism. But nonetheless, obviously, they did a very good job of messaging what they stand for, and that's how they brought out more people out of the woodwork to really glom on and support it and literally wave their flags about it. And you even, you see all the ugliness that's happening now as they're counting the ballots. I think that the Democratic Party needs to I just think that they need to go full force, more left, and be who they're going to be. And you know from branding, obviously, Tita, you have to be what you are. You can't try to be all things to all people. You need to decide what you want to be and then be it. And then everybody can get behind that unifying message. But I just think the Democratic Party is so fractured, and it's very frustrating to be a part of that and still want to support it, but to see how fractured it is, knowing that we literally, half the country voted for racism. Like, yay, racism. That's what happened. It's insane.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you. I felt this very similar ways. What about you, Lesley? How are you feeling?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so just in response to what Diane was saying, that they voted for racism. I think that, so number one, I'm just as disillusioned that there's, at this point, 68 million who voted for him, 71 million who voted for Biden. So, okay, great, 3 million more for Biden. But I think that the Republican Party is just as broken and disjointed as the Democratic Party. I think the difference is that the Republican Party has mastered the ability to target these various segments and reach them, make them feel seen, make them feel heard, make them feel like they've been put on a platform and not belittled. They have treated them with care. Now, they lie to them. They may tell them lies and tell them and promise them things that they have no intention to deliver, and tell them lies about what the Democrat will do or Biden will do, but they address them. And that, to me, is the very key difference. They did it since 2016. They've kept doing it all this time. And so they people want to feel heard. They want to feel understood and heard and paid attention to. They don't want to be talked down to. They don't care if you sound, illiterate. As long as I can understand what you're saying, that's all it takes. Democrats on the other side are still speaking in politics. They're still speaking in political words. They're trying to make people feel good. They're trying to speak too broadly. They don't understand all these different segments. So people don't feel like, especially for people of color, in my opinion, feel like the Democrats just take for granted that they will vote for them. But they're not telling them specifically, here's what we want, here's what we understand about you and your concerns, and here's our specific policies that we're going to do to address it. And more so, they never correct or fix the lies that the Republicans are saying about them. So to me, it's like a whole just complete lack of communication, a lack of effective, marketing on the Democratic side, and just making so many assumptions about who's with them. And like Diane said, being disjointed. There's that far left side of the Democratic Party, and then there's the, the old school side. And I think it's the same thing with the Republican side. There's the Trumpers, the new Trumpers, and there's like the, typical conventional Republican. And so I feel like it's a time in America where everyone is going to have to reset and reassess. Republicans, I feel like they are tactically better at reaching people with their message, but I'm an independent. I'm not happy with either party. So I'm independent and probably more in the middle. But yeah, I just think that, like Tita said, the country has been exposed. We all can see now. Now, obviously, Trump was like fuel to the fire, right? He is, sped up. I think the revelation that these people are here, people have these thoughts. But now that we know, now we need to deal with it.
I totally agree with you. Before I said my opinion, what about you, Tiffany? And I think for you, you have a different perspective because obviously coming from Australia, you are, and I'm assuming at this point, you haven't pursued citizenship fully here, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so right, you're not able to participate in that process. How are you feeling based with that kind of objective view?
I don't know if I'd call it objective.
Okay, that's true. I might have, yeah. My bad.
Yeah, I can't vote, but I've been trying to do what I can to get people to vote, like text banking and things like that, because it's really frustrating not to be able to have a say, and seeing how tight the race is, just seeing how important it is that every vote really does count. I've been devastated, to be honest. Like, I have been Tita's laughing and smiling because she's like, what's going on? Whatever happens. I'm like, no, this is not okay. Like, the world's falling apart. I've been in a total funk. And, I have a lot of friends in my community that are like very enlightened and spiritual and, but it's all for the greater good. I don't care right now that it's for the greater good and it's bringing all the crap to the surface and this is healing the world and blah, blah, blah. It just sucks. Like, it's not okay to me. Like, we're in 2020, for God's sake. And I get angry every time I see a Trump flag. I'm like, you're blatantly just saying that you're racist. I'm sorry. I just don't see any other way. So I'm mad.
Yeah. I can understand that. It's funny. I kind of, Lesley, I think you and I are very similar. The one thing that I was thinking about, and it kind of is going to lead me into my next question for you ladies. I'm really glad I gave up being a Democrat in 2020. This election made me say, you know what, I'm done with both of the parties because there is nothing that you're going to do that really speaks to my interests. I'm going to be independent. I wasn't surprised. I'm totally not surprised. I totally agree. The Democratic Party does not know how to speak to minorities. Neither does the Republican Party either. I agree. It's lies and everything. I'm disgusted by what I'm seeing, but I'm not surprised because unfortunately you can't heal what you don't reveal. We have just keep living in this dark pattern of racism and just keep sweeping it under the rug. And it's just 2020 just said, oh, well, rug's pulled up and this is where it is. And now you know the truth about people. So I'm kind of like, I kind of actually am glad to know because now we really can maybe deal with the heart of the problem. So to me, that was one of my big takeaways from this election. Like, racism is not a deal breaker. Killing almost 250,000 people is not a deal breaker anymore. So I wanted to ask you ladies, and I'll start with Queen LaLa. What are your two biggest takeaways from this election result so far?
So Pam, I know I heard you in another podcast talk about Black people's relationship with America, and you compared it to an abusive relationship. Mm-hmm. And so I think over the last 4 years, and even leading up to Donald Trump winning the presidency, you were in that space of the relationship that had been more of a kind of behind the scenes. You don't see the abuse. Maybe it's more verbal and it's kind of undercut, but you're not walking out with the same marks and scars. And then him coming into the presidency, I felt like really like, I've got bruises. Like, I'm getting beat up. Like, things are not just coded language anymore. Like, people are just coming out with the N-word. People are just saying Black people or people of color or immigrants, get out the country, go home, shithole country. Mm-hmm. Like, the things that people were saying that was no longer veiled, no longer coded. That is something that has been sitting in my soul, just resonating with me over the last 4 years of that's trauma, that you're in your own country feeling like it is okay to absolutely abuse a group of people, not just veil. That was bad enough. But now I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to throw these hands on you. I'm going to videotape you selling water and going to a barbecue and call the police and in the park. You know, there were so many things that have transpired that really hit you in the gut, that became more than just the subtle racism that America is known for. So overt, so abusive, and so traumatic. So for me, watching people vote now and half the country saying, that's okay to put kids in cages. That's okay to put your knee in somebody's neck. That's okay to call people out of their name. It's okay to let people die and not care about your fellow man with regard to COVID. I mean, all of those things make me really sit and consider what type of country and what type of people are we? That we have really lost respect, regard, regardless of red and blue, white and Black. Just the idea of a community is lost. So for me, whoever wins, they still got a long, hard road to toe because the country is divided. And someone has to be a mediator to say, how do we become Americans again? Because we're not. We're blue Americans and red Americans, or Black Americans and white Americans. So that has been the hardest thing for me to watch, being polarized and just being outwardly abused. Not that I liked it subtly, but damn, like now it's just, it's okay. It's actually politically correct now. He's made it politically correct to say and do those things. So that's been the hardest part for me.
Okay. Lesley, what about you? What are your biggest takeaways from this right now?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I had a kind of a unique opportunity with the BBC to provide a little bit of commentary. And so we, on election day and, excuse me, the day after, we were all part of this big group, like a group chat. And it was 28 of us from across the country. So all different, you know, political views, some Biden, some Trump, old, young, whatever, all across different states. And it was just so interesting to see throughout the day, like, well, starting from election night, like starting that evening and then all day yesterday, the conversations and the comments as results were coming in, you know. So for example, by the end of the night, you know, on election night, it was, you know, looking, especially when Florida won, right? It was like, okay, Trump is leading, and the people on the chat were like celebrating and, you know, just all their colorful language and posting all their high fives and all that. And those of us who were voting for Biden, you know, like, so basically the BBC asked us, well, what are your thoughts at this point? Right. And I just said optimistic, said disillusioned, but optimistic. Most people were a little, you know, whatever. But my whole thing was, I kept saying, guys, they are still counting the votes. These are only the votes of the people that did this day of, right? So it's like Trump is so, you know, I don't like the man, but he's brilliant in many ways, right? He created this chaos for weeks. He created this whole fear about mail-in ballots because his whole strategy all along was get his people to vote on the day of. So those votes would get counted on the day of, and then he's going to all of a sudden try to change the rules to say counts have to stop on that day, because he knew that the ballots have to be counted afterwards, or, you know. So it's like, to me, they get so wrapped up. The next day, obviously, as we know, things have started to turn. All of a sudden, the comments are, but did you see that there were all these ballots that were stolen, and there was all these stuffed ballots? And it was like all this commentary from the people who voted for Trump, all this commentary about scandal and, you know, something that went wrong and it couldn't possibly be. And the president already declared that he won. So why are we still counting? So my point is to say that it's so concerning to me where people are getting their information and what they are choosing to believe. Like, we can sit here and be horrified at the fact that they, you know, like, we are saying, okay, well, they're racist for voting for him. And some of them probably are. I'm not going to say that they aren't. But what I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm kind of babbling, but what I'm trying to say is, you have to think of the mindset of some of these people. They may have some compassion where racism is concerned, but they're more focused on taking in the wrong information that they have and processing it that on his behalf, as opposed to taking a moment to think critically for themselves. Number one, have all the votes been counted yet? No. Why would you think that, you know, he could just call his own president? Like, it's just so many different things. So I guess for me, it's like multifaceted. I think, yes, some of them are clearly racist, and they love the fact that this man has emboldened them to be so. But others, I think, voted for him for so many different reasons. And that is the scary part to me.
Right. That's very true. Tiffany, what about you? What are your biggest takeaways from this so far?
My biggest takeaways is, as you can tell, I'm very judgmental right now, and I'm very singular-minded, and I'm probably sounding like a Republican in a lot of the things that I say, but I'm just in this midst of anger. But, you know, to Lesley's point, I think I do see a Republican point of view where it's very narrow-minded. There's not a lot of critical thinking. And I come from a place where, you know, not so much me, but my boyfriend has spoken to some Republicans lately, trying to understand why they vote for Trump and what their viewpoint is. And I think that's really important to understand, right? Like, to go into the conversation. And it's just that from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing time and time again, it's just sprouting Fox News. Like, it's not critical thinking. It's not researching. It's just believing whatever they want to believe. Now, we all do that as humans. We believe what we want to believe, right? For the most part. But my biggest takeaway is that, and I've always said this, but it's become more and more evident to me as I watch Trump trying to sue everyone, is that we're dealing with a child. He's acting like a child, like a spoilt brat that's not getting his way, and then his followers are following suit. Like, there's some hysterical things on Instagram at the moment that are just making me laugh about this man throwing tantrums, basically. And it's you know, and again, from someone that's not from this country, as an Australian, America, I'm sorry, but he's embarrassing America. Like, the things that are happening, you know, the news that's been covered in Australia, and then Tita sent me something recently from the UK. Like, it's not making America great again. So my biggest thing is, like, and I've always said that politicians are childish anyway, but this is next level childish stuff. Unfortunately, that's my biggest takeaway.
That's okay. I think we're all kind of feeling that way. And what about you, Diane? What are your biggest takeaways?
Oh my goodness. I guess a couple of things. So, you know, so I grew up in the panhandle of Florida, which is Trump country. And I haven't lived there for a very long time, and I haven't been back there for a very long time, because when I do go back there, I have to wash my ears out with soap from all the racism. I can't handle it. Because they openly use the N-word like it's like they're saying, pass the butter, right? It's just, so the reason why I shared that I grew up there is that I think, I'm not saying everybody who voted for him comes from places like that, but he does very well in places like that. And the reason why he does well in places like that is because, and I know this because I didn't leave there till I was 24 years old. I had never been outside of Pensacola until I was 24 years old. Like, I've literally never been anywhere. And when I was growing up, when I was in a terrible relationship with this boyfriend for 6.5 years when I was a young adult who was racist, and then I was becoming that way. And then I was like, wait a second, what's happening here? And because I was in college and around so many people, even in college in a small town gets people from other countries because they just come there for a variety of reasons. So the more I was exposed to other people of all different backgrounds, countries, races, languages, whatever, the more I realized like something did not feel right. Right. And then once I got married and moved away and then lived somewhere else, and then moved again and moved back to Tallahassee and then moved to Orlando. And then, so I've been around and I've traveled. Most of the people in places like Pensacola never leave. They never go. And if they do travel, well, they might travel to Biloxi, Mississippi. Like, literally, and I'm not saying none of them ever go to Europe, but they're not. I just think that when you never leave your hometown and you're never immersed in any other culture or any other region of even the US, it's very easy to think that you are the center of the universe and you're the center of the world and the country, and that your beliefs and your religion and your whatever, it's easy to center yourself in everything. And so I think it makes it a lot easier to buy into his rhetoric, because he does tap into, that like, you've been put upon if you're somebody in the panhandle, or whatever it is that he taps into. It's easy to buy into that because you can't see anything else because you've never been exposed to anything else. And so that is a huge takeaway for me. And honestly, even just here locally, and I live in Orlando, here locally, just when I go like on my walks around the neighborhoods that I live near, and I see these different houses with their Trump flag, I see a lot of Biden stuff because I live in an area that's a pretty good mixture of a lot of liberals and some conservatives. So I see a lot of Trump signs and whatnot. And I've been walking since the pandemic. So I've been walking for months. So I pass the same houses every single day. And so I see some of these people, say good morning to them, and just in just the good morning, how you doing, whatever, like you can pick out the Trump people. I mean, there's just this closed-mindedness to it that it's not even like a closed-mindedness from the standpoint of like, oh, no, yeah, that's your thing, this is my thing. It's a closed-mindedness from the standpoint of you are wrong, I am right, this is the way it should be. Brown people shouldn't come to this country, speak English, all those sorts of things, where it's closed-mindedness from the it's ethnocentric, it's all those things. And and another takeaway, and I had this realization the other day. So my mother passed away a long time ago, but she was the oldest daughter of Italian immigrants. Her parents literally came through Ellis Island from Italy. And I thought, God, in the early 1900s, I think, to escape tyranny and fascism. And we are living in tyranny and fascism. I was just like, that is a hot bleeping mess. Like how she would, my mother as an Italian immigrant and growing up in New York City, like she had her own bigotry because just, I think every group does. We'd all be lying if we didn't say we had our own, whatever we thought about any group of people. But she was, an Italian immigrant who came to this her parents came to this country, and they were able to give their kids a better life, and she was able to experience things that she probably wouldn't have been able to experience having stayed in Italy. So the thought that here I am having done for myself what I've done because of what her parents did to come here, she'd be turning over in her grave knowing that this man has taken us here. Not that these things weren't already they were underground and subversive, but they've bubbled up and been allowed to come to the forefront, which again, maybe is good because now we can, like you said, we can name it and we can deal with it. But oh my God, she would be so, I just can't believe you have people who literally were immigrants that came here and then the other thing is we're all, I'm sitting right now on stolen land. We all are. We're all on stolen land. And that I can't believe this is where we're at after all of this.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to process.
Yeah,
and
that's my disgust.
Tita, no, I agree. Tita, what about you? What are your biggest takeaways?
My biggest takeaways is that America has mental illness, yes. And that we are insane. And I say that because I say mental illness because, like Diane said, you can have I'm all about different perspectives and different mindsets, because that's what makes everyone unique, and that's what makes a community is like differences, right? Mm-hmm. But there's definitely right and wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you don't see that and you can't comprehend that, then there's something wrong. There's probably a mental illness. There's some neurotransmitters that are blocked or that are, plugged up.
Maybe you need a cleanse. Who knows?
Yeah, right. And then, so that clearly showed that, okay. And then I also believe that we are insane. And the reason why I say we are insane is, what do they say the definition insanity is? When you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, you're not getting any. Okay, so this is 2020. When did the Constitution and when did a lot of things get established? How many years ago? And so obviously what we're doing isn't working. So having the same no terms in Congress, using the same systems from I don't know when, it's just all whacked. So it's like we're insane. Like we can't, and for whatever reason, we can't get past it. And so there's a few small percentage of us, including us 6, who see the insanity, who see how there's mental illness, but like the people who run the White House, who aren't servant leadership and politics, that I thought when I learned in poli-sci meant servant leadership. That was a definition of poli-sci. That ain't happening here. So my takeaway is, again, insane. We're insane. We have mental illness and we are whacked. That's just a high level. But I mean, I love you guys. I love my people here in America. But I'm just trying to give an overview of this. Elections just shows that we're not we're not as bad or as innovative or as on top of the ladder nation that we say we are. You know what I'm saying? Like we're actually probably that nation of that black sheep, because I know other countries look at us and be like, wow. And I thought America is supposed to have all the type of opportunities and equalities and equities and all that kind of stuff. So clearly not.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we have all of the crazies. That's about it. Equities, my behind. Crazies is definitely. And it's so funny the way this conversation is going, because it's going to lead me to a fun one. I think we're all going to get a laugh out of this. I'm going to quote the great Charlemagne the God. As he said, the craziest people in America come from 2 places, Florida and the Bronx. So let's talk about Florida, because Florida, we are going to Florida. Like, that's what we do. Like, we are known for Florida. Like, there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. We're going to Florida. So then let's talk about how, as a Florida residents, we've all thought it is a possibility this state may flip blue with the election. But as we are seeing, that did not happen. It looks like we have not turned blue based upon Cuban Americans, saying Cuban Americans, white women, and Black men. So I kind of wanted to get everyone's thought. Who wants to jump in first? Because I said this should be a really energetic point, because most of us are here. Tiffany, we are going to teach you about how bad Florida is.
Well, Lesley's got some good stuff on this. She needs to go first.
Okay.
Hit it, Lesley.
Come on, Lesley.
I don't know how good it is, but I think it speaks to what I said earlier, right? So just like you said, I'm here in Orange County, Central Florida, for those who may not know. And yeah, we were solid blue. There was no problem with that. And that whole, even Seminole County, which has always been red, flipped blue for the first time. And Pinellas County, right outside of Tampa, which has kind of always been purple as well, it also flipped blue. So those are huge, significant changes. But because of population, it wasn't enough people to counter that Dade County in Miami. Now, this goes to what I was saying earlier, as far as the Democrats just taking people for granted and not speaking directly to them. The Republicans have been down there propaganding these people for years, right? Mm-hmm. But they have very specific messages, right? The Cubans have different concerns from the Venezuelans, which have different concerns from the people from Dominican Republic, which is different from the Puerto Ricans, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the Republicans go in and they talk to each one of those groups and tell them exactly what they want to hear. And not only do they tell them what they want to hear, they use fear and lie to them about what the Democrats are going to do. So they are so loyal, because they're, especially the people who are fearful of socialism, the Venezuelans and the Cubans, they are going to be extra loyal, and they're going to make sure they all go out and vote, because they do not want a return to that. Right. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Democrats come down here and they're talking. Well, I don't know specifically, but they definitely had messages for the Puerto Ricans because of hurricanes and all that. But that is not the same concerns that the Cubans have, right? Or the Venezuelans. So to me, we lost. Florida came down to Dade County and lost because the Democrats refused to do their job. This is really what it boils down to. And if they don't learn, I don't know why they just took for granted that because they voted for Hillary last time, that they were just going to vote for Biden this time. Again, taking people for granted. So if they don't learn from this, I don't know when Florida will ever flip. But it's so diverse here. It's so crazy. Mm-hmm. We should be a blue state.
No, I totally agree with you. And I say that a lot at work, and I'm sure all of us in marketing, even as educators, you cannot speak to one group the same way all the time. Nobody is monolithic, and you're 100% right. And it totally was easy to tell why Orlando flipped blue, because primarily for Hispanics, we are largely populated by Puerto Ricans. So we are easily able to communicate to them. I totally agree. Hispanics is totally different because in South Florida, because of the Cuban descent, having that relationship, Fidel. And then I also heard that they had flags at times of Che Guevara during some type of, or they were politicizing Che Guevara against the Cuban Americans. And it's just that's not how you're going to win them. It's not going to work. You got to be different.
You never once heard Biden say, "Hey, Venezuelans, I know that Trump keeps telling you that I'm going to do X, but here's what I'm going to do. I don't support this. I don't support that. This is what I understand for you." Say what you're going to do, stop all the political rhetoric and just speak in words that they will understand. Right. It's the thing you brought up our Black men. I think what Black men are drawn to about Trump is his rebelliousness, his rebellious streak, his I don't give a F streak. Right. They love that, even though I don't know why they can't see that he doesn't like them, but they are drawn to that rebellious thing. And a lot of people are fooled in thinking he's this great businessman. So I think they are drawn to him. They think of him as this rebel individual who maybe I can't relate to him in this way, but I admire. There's something about him that they admire. They love that
he says whatever he wants.
Plain, right? He says what he wants. He talks plain, and they can understand him, right? Again, I feel like it just comes down to basic communication and messaging. It's he draws the uneducated white person. You know what I mean? Like he draws those people because you understand exactly what he's saying. You can tell from his tone and mannerisms what he stands for. And he's like I said, I don't give a anything attitude. And he draws those people.
Absolutely. Queen LaLa, what about you? What do you think?
Oh, honey, the gunshine state did not disappoint. I already knew the gunshine state was about to be bred. I've lived in South Florida, Central Florida, and North Florida. And one thing about Florida is the South. I know a lot of people don't think that Florida is. It has the reputation of, Disney World and coming for vacation, but Florida also had the most lynchings per capita than any other state. Not just because it was the biggest state, per capita means that based on its size and number of people here, there was still the most. So it has that reputation. It has that history. It is a racist state. And it turned red because that's what it is. We had Trayvon Martin set off the whole Black Lives Matter movement because of what happened here. That we had a child that was killed and then villainized as if he was doing something wrong, and his murderer was able to go free. So we're talking about voting for a racist in a state where they already said you can murder a child and go free. So, what else do you expect? I am glad that I'm in Orange County. Orange County was blue, but I work in Lake County. And anytime I turn my car in any direction, north, south, east, or west, is red. So I pass several Confederate flags to get to work. I see Trump signs waving all the time. So being in Florida and what we saw, that did not surprise me in the least. Now, as it goes for our Latino population, that hurt my heart. Because, I understand the Cubans type of relationship with their idea of what happened in their country, and they often, I know a lot of Cuban people grew up down there. So you did too, Pam. So, they often talk about having to lose everything. And it's sad that their memory of that story gets lost in how they are able to then support the oppression of other people, because they cannot let go of a story that had nothing to do with what is going on here. So it bothers me that they're able to vote for oppression of other people and at the same time talk about the oppression that they feel that they received in another country. That's the problem. We need to reach out to our brothers and sisters over there, because they really need some soul searching, as well as our Venezuelans. They're holding on to a story that happened in their country and failing to see that the same oppression is happening in this country, and you are voting for it because you're lost in your story and can't see the other side of what other people are dealing with. I do kind of think our Black men are getting a bad rap here, and it's not necessarily true. Like, I feel like, we still have most of our Black men that are voting not for Trump, but out of that small population that is, we've seen a greater increase. And, I don't know. I have some theories around that too. There's always some of us that just want to assimilate better. We think that if we just show that, we're down, they're going to accept us and everything's going to be all right. I watched a little of some of the Trump rallies, and, they let them come up and say the Pledge of Allegiance and sing the national anthem and tell their ass to sit back down, don't they? So it's a little interesting to watch. I really like to see us do more of the work to help find our lost souls and let them see really how tragic it looks when they are at the knees of those that are oppressing them, instead of standing up with others that are trying to fight for their freedom. So not surprised by the gunshine state, as I said before. Got some work to do, right?
Yes, absolutely. Diane, what about you?
Yeah, I'd never heard gunshine state before, but now I'm going to use that. Thank you. I think I agree with everything that has been said. And I would add to that, though, that we also I think there needs to be a lot stronger and more powerful local grassroots efforts by the Democratic Party to begin getting more Democrats elected locally to rise up. Because, for example, we have a governor who is just a mini Trump, And that doesn't help us. I mean, that just sort of, it's like it exponentially makes it worse. And because then locally you're getting people, kind of buying into that, and then it just filters further. But I am a little bit hopeful because I did some volunteering for Anna Eskamani's campaign. Even though I don't live in her district, I just love her. So I did some handwritten postcards for their campaign. I think I wrote like 200 or 300 postcards. And throughout this whole time that I've been following her on social media, there's been this buzz of Anna for governor. And so I'm pretty sure she's going to run. So I think when you start electing more progressives and she's, I think she's Iranian, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you start electing more of a more diverse local population, whether it be, she's Iranian, she's a woman, whether it's Black women, Hispanics, Latinos, Puerto Ricans, whomever. But when you start electing progressives locally, this is how we get change, right? And I think she's one of the reasons why Orange County is so blue. She's a big voice here. I mean, she is the most vocal local politician I've ever seen, ever. Right. And she, similarly to Trump, she says whatever the hell she wants, except that she's saying good stuff, right? But she will call people out on their BS. So I think we need to. Florida's had far too many Republican governors, far too many. And I think it has just poisoned the state, and these Republican governors are also giving money to big businesses, and they're not doing things that could help maybe some of the voters who voted for Trump because whatever the other reasons are, they voted for him, they felt disenfranchised, they felt like he heard them, whatever. If you could get local politicians that kind of understand that, like Anna Eskamani was very much for working class people. She was giving part of her salary to families who were getting evicted from hotels they were staying in because they lost their jobs. So I think when you have a person like that really, really, truly cares about people, I think there starts to be this shift, but it can't start at the presidential level. It has to start locally, and it has to then build up from there, because those are the people who end up, hopefully, Barack Obama was a local person right? So that's kind of where those things have to start, I feel.
No, I agree with that. And it's funny because we're going to get there about local elections, because I do feel like this is definitely a time where you have to really start to realize that the government starts right in your own backyard, and you have to make sure that you have the right voices and the right messaging to engage people and have them a part of the process. Like, we can no longer not be a part of the process. Tiffany, I know you don't know much about obviously experiencing Florida per se, but what about it from Texas? I know Texas almost flipped blue as well from being there. What is the atmosphere like around there? Has there been any conversations about, could it have flipped? I know Beto O'Rourke at one point even almost flipped it, but it just hasn't pushed.
Yeah, the conversations that I have are like one-sided, right? Because all my friends are blue, so they're liberal, or they're independent. So there was just like a hope and a prayer that we really would flip. And when I was watching the count the other day, I was like, oh my God, we're going to go blue. But then didn't happen. Right. I also live in an area that's a blue bubble, right? It's Austin. So it's very much a bubble. But you do notice it when you step outside the bubble. There's a lot more Trump flags and signs and stickers and those sorts of things. So it's still very much, from what I can see, very ingrained in this state. That it's a red state. There's a lot of old money here as well. There's a lot of wealth here, those sorts of things. But there's also a lot of Californians moving here that I think is really making a difference as well. I think that's what's really happening.
I think that's a good point, because I have heard that from other areas when I was watching some of the recaps, that people are talking about how more progressive, younger, open-minded people are moving into various communities, which is expanding the blue bubbles in certain areas. And that actually is part of what's contributing to Biden right now having success. He's actually winning the suburbs because the suburbs are now being taken over by more younger progressive thought thinkers and citizens, which is great. Lesley, I know you had a point that you wanted to make, so go ahead. Yeah, and please feel free to jump in, y'all.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to make another quick point about Florida, and kind of what Diane was saying is like, the type of people you get into these positions is so important, especially if they, have scruples and morals, because once the people have voted on something, they have voted, and that is the decision that they made. So remember 2018, we voted unanimously in Florida for the former felons to have their votes restored. And that whole thing got chipped away over the last 2 years. But think about it. There was they said almost 1 million, of those former felons would have been eligible to vote in this election. And imagine if only half of them voted blue. That would have been more than enough to have surpassed the 400,000 deficit that we have right now in Dade, right? So if you have people of scruples and morals who will withhold the vote that the people decided, the state will progress, and similarly here in Florida, we have all these people moving in from New York and other states. It is old, it's old red, but I feel like it's really more blue. It's just that, again, we lost Dade because of those specific issues with the Cubans. And if we can't, if you continue to have people in governor or leadership that will not allow the people's voice to be heard, the people need to speak up, and, we need to make that change. So I agree. I think she's a great option, but there's other people who we need to support, and whether it's Democratic Party or whoever, there needs to be better programs to support people who want to be, who want to take office, and help them get there so that we can get some real good people in office.
No, that's absolutely true. I'm sorry. Was somebody going to say something? Go ahead.
I wanted to just, I'm sorry, Tita, I didn't see.
It's okay.
I just wanted to add too that I think it's also important that to somehow, and I don't know how to facilitate this, but we need to get more people volunteering for campaigns. I'm 54 years old and I've never volunteered for a campaign in my entire voting life until this year. And I think because I didn't realize how easy, it doesn't have to mean phone banking. It doesn't have to mean physically going anywhere if we could do that right now. It doesn't mean I was writing postcards at first and I was like, this is kind of fun. And then I started phone banking. I'm like, well, that's kind of fun. So you can find something to do that you can do given whatever constraints you have or whatever you enjoy and don't enjoy. But I don't know if enough people understand how important that is, and understand that it doesn't have to be all consuming. It can be if you want it to be, but it doesn't have to be. You can just do a little bit. But I would love if in high schools they started to teach kids about volunteering for political campaigns, just so as they grow up, they know that this is something you really need to do. So you have participation in the process. You become more invested in the process. Obviously you'd probably still vote, but you're more aware of issues when you're doing work that supports a candidate, whatever candidate that is, but you're just more aware,
No, I totally agree with that. And it's funny because we're naturally progressing into my next question. It was just like, okay, now that we know what it is, and Tita, I'm going to start with you. How do we shift the tide? It's like, now we're talking about that. We've talked about the things that didn't work, why it all fell apart. But it's like, okay, now how do we shift the tide? We've already started mentioning having new voices, but what do we need to do as citizens to make sure that we are being a part of that change? Tita, why don't you kick us off?
Revolt.
Yeah.
I mean,
LaLa,
burn it down.
Revolt. I mean, I consider myself, honestly, when it comes to politics, a little bit outlier. I'm a little bit of that unicorn, right? Because I don't study it. I know what sounds like BS, and I know what that's not going to work.
Yeah.
so I can be informed enough to make, the decision to be a voter and to be a full participating citizen. So I do I ensure I'm responsible when it comes to that. But I know I do think differently. And again, it goes back to even when you're talking about the Black voters or the Latino voters and so forth, at the end of the day, it's really down to human behaviors, relationships, and connections, right? So, and the only way things are going to change is if we are able to come together and connect and relate and help folks over the traumas and people being broken, to be able to create this shift. And that means that we might, as citizens, have to come together and do some sort of revolting to be able to flip this leadership on its head to create new momentum and new shifts. And I even think that when the Black men who probably voted for Trump, I don't know what their psyche is, but it could be one or two things. They could have some sort of trauma with their Black mama, with their Black aunties, with their Black grandma. And like Queen LaLa was saying, if they're in that story, if it feels real, like if that trauma's right there and it feels real to that point, then no, they're not going to vote for Biden because Kamala is that Black women that they're looking at that they hate. So they're like, no, I will not vote for that party at all. There's so many different human dynamics. There's multi-dimensions of way that the brain works. And I think that the only way that things are going to change is if we get some real people who really want to get into leadership and understand that as humans, as being here, as we exist, that we all have we all deserve to be able to integrate as healthy as possible, and not all about egos and what I got and what you got and you red, you blue, you gray. I don't know, so I think it's just, honestly, it's getting to a point to where it's just like, let's just all turn to unicorns and revolt and shift this place. I wanted to say shift this. But I won't say it because we're not rapping right now.
No, I agree. We definitely want to shift. And I've looked and I've noticed time is running, but I want each of you to answer this question. And it ties right into this. With obviously the nation being as divided as we are, we've already uncovered that. We know that the election is not over, so we really don't even have to worry about talking about whether he's president or not. Maybe we'll do a part 2. But I would want to know from each of you, what is one thing that you think needs to be done within, I'm going to assume Joe Biden is the president, within the first 100 hours of him being president? What's one thing he needs to do in order to move the tide? So we're going to rapid fire it around. So Queen LaLa, I'm going to start with you first. What is that one thing you feel he needs to do?
I need to hear him address the country as Americans, not red and blue Americans, just Americans, and talk about what he is going to do to unite the country, find common ground, and move us to a place where we are no longer stuck in this mode of polarization, tribalism, and accusatory nature. I want to hear that he will be a uniter and he will work towards bridging the gaps that we have in place. Not just taking up the side of those that are, Democrats and feel one way. You have to bridge. Otherwise, without a bridge, so that the others that are on the other side don't have the opportunity to hear from the blue side, the red side, the black side, the white side about why these issues are even happening without a bridge, the same thing will reoccur. So I need to hear what he's going to do to bridge our country and that we are all Americans.
Okay. Lesley, what about you?
I agree. I was going to actually say very similar, but I was going to say I would like to hear, like, when you talk about first 100 hours, I'd like to hear him calling together the Senate, the House, whoever, representatives, and get them together in a room and say, guys, what do we need to do? We have got to get this country moving forward and we need to do it together. I think he needs to make a call out to them. But then quickly, I want to just add, I think we, the people, need to be having kind of what Tita touched on, we need to have conversations amongst ourselves, and we need to stop putting so much dependency on the government. We are human beings, and we can govern ourselves as far as how we treat each other from a humanity level. If we start reaching across and talking to people we don't know and building those bridges and having those relationships, we won't think in terms of me and mine. We will think in terms of our. But if we don't start doing that, we should not be looking to the government to force those kind of situations on us. We should be, as human beings and neighbors, wanting to do that for ourselves.
Okay. What about you, Diane? I'm just going in order if I see it.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I know. I completely agree with that because, I mean, at the end of the day, we are the government.
Yeah.
Right. So they serve us. So they serve the will of us and, excuse me, what we want. So I agree. We need to take more of an active role. And I would say also, I would like to see him, and I feel like he will do this. Let's embrace science and facts and knowledge instead of conspiracy theories, and not to poo-poo anybody's religion, but, you know, I just feel like a lot of people have taken their conspiracy theories and in many cases, their religious beliefs and pushed them into the forefront so that it like diminishes, you know, other religions and or facts and science, like with regard to the pandemic. So I would like to see him really I would give anything to hear an articulate person up there talking about the facts of science and even just with regard to racism. There are facts about how we got to where we are today. Let's talk about those things instead of making up BS stuff that's not real. I'd love to see that kind of a conversation.
Totally agree. What about you, Tiffany? What would you like to see within the first 100 hours?
Police reform. What are they going to do to make police accountable? What are they going to do to make sure that they are trained better? What are they going to do to make sure that there are not racist police on the streets? What are they going to do to really educate them around systemic racism, their own prejudice, their own bias? Like, there's some real work that needs to be done there so the police actually protect us and people can feel, Black people, let's face it, can feel safe.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like that too, personally. Tita, what about you?
I think what everyone's, stated, I think to get real people in the room, when I say real people, focus group of hearing from real citizens and actually taking that data and creating real action and plans to move us from where we're at. Forget politics, like no politicians allowed. Some real people to come and take the data, to come take the information, who aren't part of, Capitol Hill, and for Biden and his campaign to remove the politics hat and really step into servant leadership for the people. Or us, like I said, the people are going to revolt. So they better get ahead of it before the people can get ahead of him.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I kind of said the same thing. I would like to see within the first 100 hours him address the country. I think you need to calm it down because, I think it's like a powder keg right now. And if you're not careful, it's going to blow up. And I just don't want us to wind up in martial law. And that's not where any of us want to be, because once we're there, we're just not going to come out. So we need to calm down. So that leads me to my final question in a rapid fire, and we can all answer as we feel fit. Do you think we can heal from this? Or do you think we are too far gone?
Yes, I think we can heal. We have to.
Thank you.
We can heal. It's not going to be overnight.
No.
Yeah. Like I said, it's like a new time. It's it's a reset. So we can if people want to.
It's going to take some hard work and honestly, like some utter and complete honesty about where we are, right? And how we got here. We can't no more of this like passing the buck stuff. Somebody has to take responsibility. Somebody has to, own up to it. We have to all be honest. And then we all have to roll up our sleeves and do work,
Yes. Yes, Queen LaLa. What about you? Or I'm sorry, who did I interrupt? You know?
I was going to say, I don't know. I really don't know. In looking at history, I thought we were on our way to healing. And now
That's
here we are yet again. Mm-hmm. So I'm not as optimistic, but
and that's great. That's honest, though. Mm-hmm. Tita, was that you, my dear? Do you believe we can heal?
Well, let me put it this way. I do believe great people can do, or great things can happen.
Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
Okay, wait, no,
not convincing.
I don't believe you.
I know. Okay. Oh, dang, I don't even know how to put it. The truth is, I do believe that you can do excellent things in little steps. I do believe that excellent things happen. And unfortunately, it might keep going slower than I had hoped. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And it might keep going slow. But I do believe that excellence can come out of little things. Excellence can come out of little things.
It reminds me of Harry Potter. You know how you had to keep killing the Horcrux? He had like 7 of them. How many more? You know? So,
excellent come out of little things. But it is, but we have to heal because it's abusive. Right now it's toxic and it's abusive. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think it's hard to see. Is there victory? It's like when you're in a toxic abusive relationship, it's hard to be like, to see that there is a greater future. And
I agree.
I don't know. So I'll just keep doing the podcast with Tiffany and just keep hoping for the best.
Well, that's what we all have to do. Yes. I mean, personally, I am optimistic, but I'm cautiously optimistic because I have not seen us this divided. And like when I talked to my mom about it, I asked her and she was like, this is very reminiscent of Jim Crow. And it took us so long just to overcome that. So even now we're on a more enhanced version of it. I am afraid. I'm not going to pretend and say I'm not concerned, but I'm optimistic. But the key thing is what you said, Lesley, what you said, Diane, what you were also saying, Queen LaLa, Tiffany, and Tita. We have to do the work. It's going to take baby steps. It's going to take little conversations. It's going to take some hard, honest truths to be revealed. People are gonna have to check their racism, their classism at the door in order for us to really get this moving. So conversations like this are needed and we have to keep having them. And we have to be the ones to do the work. Because I agree, Lesley, it's up to us. The government is going to be the government. It's on us. So the one thing I would leave each of you to think about, and my audience as well, what is something that you are going to do different now moving forward, knowing where you live in, know the country that you are in to help bring about change. Because if you are not part of the change, you are part of the problem. Mm. So thank you, ladies. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with me. We definitely have to do this again.
Yes.
Like I was going to try to put y'all on the spot and see can we commit?
Yeah.
I'm down. Because we don't know how everything is going to shake out right now. It's so much uncertainty.
Oh Lord.
I would rather see us come together. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. We know.
We know. But I want to see what he's going to do because the moves have to be right. And there's a lot on the line right now.
We all getting sued. That's what's gonna happen.
Sure. And we didn't really touch on that, but the Senate is important as well, right? Because there's still a chance they can win the Senate. And if they can win the Senate, then there can really our discussion can be very different.
Absolutely. And Biden might be a lame duck president. So and a lame duck president during a pandemic and a borderline civil war is not cute.
No.
That's why I said I think we're going to have to come back together, but we will figure it out. So again, I want to thank you guys for coming and sharing your time, your energy, your thoughts with me. I know that this one was a little bit more somber, but we have a lot, I felt like, to kind of unpack. Mm-hmm. And we did unpack quite a bit. Yeah. And I definitely will have you back again. So I'm very excited. So I want to thank you. Thank you,
Pam. Well done.
Thank you, Pam.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was quite a conversation. I am so grateful that Diane, Lesley, Tiffany, Tita, and Queen LaLa were able to give me some time and energy and for us to sit down and begin to have conversations around where do we go from here. I know that we can talk about how the election is going, and we're very anxiously awaiting for everything to be resolved because you do have to have resolution before you start to look forward. But if I think about anything, 2020 has definitely revealed that we already knew or know the foundational issues that make up our country, and we really need to start dealing with them. So it's time to hit the ground running. It's time to start having proactive conversations and talking to people who are not like you so that you can learn and grow from them. So I hope you will join us again. The ladies have definitely agreed to do a part 2 because I definitely think that this is a road ahead that is not going to be easy. I think that there's a lot of people who kind of are waiting for like this magic switch of everything to automatically go back to what it was before. And like I mentioned in the episode, and pretty much all of us said, this is not going to be that time. We are now in a whole new phase. So it's time to kind of shift our thinking and really look at how we are going to be a part of the solution versus being a part of the problem. So I really do hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and leave me any comments that you have about, what are you thinking and your thoughts? And maybe use this as an opportunity to have a conversation with your family. We're coming up into the holidays, your friends, because that's what's going to help. We all have to start talking about the political process because no longer are we going to be just a passenger. We are actually going to be helping to drive the boat. So I look forward to hearing your comments and your feedback. And I didn't get a chance to do it in the beginning of the episode, but I want to make sure I do take this time to give all praise and reverence to everyone out here dealing with COVID-19. Please, 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 please make sure you are social distancing, wearing your mask, being kind and taking care of yourself mentally and physically. With all of this stress creates illness inside the body. It creates trauma. We need to make sure that we are healing ourselves. So take care of yourselves and each other. I know that this was a longer episode, but again, it was such a great conversation. I wanted to make sure I shared it in its entirety, but I look forward to talking to you guys again soon next week. Have a wonderful one. Talk to you later. All of our information and all of my guest information will be in the show notes. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.